This is the male reproductive system. This is the penis. This is the urethra. This is the corpus cavernosa. This is the prepuce. This is the urinary bladder. This is the prostate gland. This is the testes. This is the epididymis. This is the vas deferens. This is the scrotum. This is the glans penis. This is the seminal vesicle. This is the bulbourethral gland. This is the ejaculatory duct. Organs of the male reproductive system produce and maintain sex cells called sperm cells. A mature sperm cell has a head, which contains the acrosome and the nucleus, a midpiece, and a tail. Sperm cells form in a process called spermatogenesis. In the male embryo, spermatogenic cells are undifferentiated and also called spermatogonia. Beginning during embryonic development, hormones stimulate the spermatogonia to undergo mitosis, and mitosis is the process of which sperm cells multiply into two daughter sperm cells, and some of them enlarge to become primary spermatocytes. At puberty, the primary spermatocytes then reproduce by a special type of cell division called meiosis. Meiosis includes two successive divisions called first and second meiotic divisions. The first meiotic division, which is also called meiosis I, separates homologous chromosome pairs. Homologous are the same gene for gene, however, they may not be identical. Before meiosis I, each homologous chromosome is replicated, so it consists of two complete DNA strands called chromatids. The chromatids of a replicated chromosome attach at regions called centromeres. Each of the cells that undergoes the second meiotic division, called meiosis II, begins with one member of each homologous pair, a condition termed haploid. That is, a haploid cell has one set of chromosomes. The second division separates the chromatids, producing cells that are still haploid, but whose chromosomes are no longer in the replicated form. After meiosis II, each of the chromatids has become an independent chromosome. During spermatogenesis, each primary spermatocyte divides to form two secondary spermatocytes. Each of these cells in turn divides to form two spermatids, which mature into sperm cells. The result for each primary spermatocyte that undergoes meiosis is 4 sperm cells with 23 chromosomes in each of their nuclei.
This is the vaginal orifice. This is the labium major. This is the labium minor. This is the clitoris. This is the urethra. This is the symphysis pubis. This is the urinary bladder. This is the uterine tube. This is the ovary. Over here we have the vagina. And this here is the rectum. This is the fimbriae. Oogenesis. Oogenesis is the process of egg cell formation. Beginning at puberty, some primary oocytes are stimulated to continue meiosis. As in the case of sperm cells, the resulting cells have 1/2 as many chromosomes in their nuclei as their parent cells. When a primary oocyte divides, the distribution of the cytoplasm is unequal. One of the resulting cells, called a secondary oocyte, is large and the other, called the first polar body, is small. This differs from spermatogenesis. The large secondary oocyte can be fertilized by a sperm cell. Upon fertilization, the secondary oocyte divides unequally to produce a tiny second polar body and a large fertilized egg cell, also called a zygote. The polar bodies have no further function and soon degenerate. Their role in reproduction is to concentrate the bulk of the cytoplasm, nutrients, and organelles from the 4 meiotic products into one cell, the one that could be fertilized. The zygote and early embryo require this boost. Ovulation. As a follicle matures, its primary oocyte undergoes oogenesis, giving rise to a secondary oocyte and a first polar body. The process, called ovulation, releases a secondary oocyte and the first polar body from 1 or 2 surrounding layers of follicular cells from the mature follicle. Hormones trigger ovulation and weaken its walls. Eventually, the wall ruptures and follicular fluid and secondary oocyte ooze from the ovary's surface. After ovulation, the secondary oocyte and surrounding follicular cells are usually propelled to the opening of a nearby uterine tube. Female sex hormones. Several tissues, including the ovaries, adrenal, and the placenta, secrete female sex hormones belonging to 2 major groups, estrogen and progesterone. The ovaries are the primary source of estrogens. Estrogens simulate enlargement of accessory organs, including the vagina, uterus, uterine tubes, ovaries, and external reproductive structures. Estrogen also develop and maintain the female secondary sex characteristics. The ovaries are also the primary source of progesterone. This hormone promotes changes in the uterus during the female reproductive cycle, affects the mammary glands, and helps regulate the secretion of gonadotropins from the anterior pituitary. The female reproductive cycle. The female reproductive cycle consists of regular, recurring changes in the uterine lining, which culminate the menstrual bleeding. At the same time, changes in the ovary constitute the ovarian cycle. Soon, cycles usually begin around age 13 and continue into middle age, then cease. A female's first reproductive cycle, called menarche, occurs after the ovaries and other organs of the reproductive control system have matured and begun responding to certain hormones. Then, hypothalamic secretion of GnRH stimulates the anterior pituitary to release threshold levels of FSH and LH. FSH stimulates maturation of an ovarian follicle. The follicular cells produce increasing amounts of estrogens and some progesterone. LH stimulates certain ovarian cells to secrete precursor molecules, which are soon used to produce estrogens. Estrogens and progesterone inhibit the anterior pituitary's release of LH and FSH. Consequently, no other follicles are stimulated to develop when the corpus luteum is active. However, if a sperm cell does not fertilize the egg cell released at ovulation, the corpus luteum begins to degenerate on about the 24th day of the cycle. Eventually, connective tissue replaces it. The remnant of such a corpus luteum is called a corpus albicans. When the corpus luteum ceases to function, concentrations of estrogens and progesterone decline rapidly, and blood vessels in the endometrium constrict. This reduces the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the thickened uterine lining, and the lining tissues soon disintegrate and slough off. This flow usually begins about the 28th day of the cycle and continues for 3 to 5 days while the concentrations of estrogens are low. The menstrual flow marks the end of a reproductive cycle and the beginning of a new cycle.
Pregnancy is when an egg cell combines with the sperm cell and creates fertilization. The cell called zygote is the first cell of the future offspring. The zygote undergoes mitosis, which gives rise to 2 new cells. The cells divide into 4 cells, 8 cells, and then so forth. This result turns into a phase called cleavage. The cells continue to divide into smaller cells, and the original cells die. This form creates an offspring called embryo, which lasts until the 8th week.
Embryonic stage. The embryonic stage extends until the 8th week of parental development. During this time, the placenta forms, the main internal organs develop, and the major external body structures appear.
After the 8th week, the offspring is called a fetus.